Hello, welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Anastasia Lavrina, and tonight we are diving into a critical issue that's sending tremors through the UK economy. The United Kingdom is bracing for economic disruption as sweeping new US tariffs threaten to hit over £60 billion in annual exports. The proposed tariffs, which could be unveiled as part of Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day, could see levies of up to 20% imposed on British goods, ranging from the cars and whiskey to cheese and other key exports. These measures are more than just a tariff hike. They risk sending shockwaves through the key UK industries, potentially putting tens of thousands of jobs at risk and driving up costs for consumers across the nation. The automotive sector's long reliant on access to the US market is particularly vulnerable. The food producers could also see vital supply chains disrupted, creating long-term effects that could ripple throughout the UK economy. Now, government officials are signaling a desire to avoid a full-blown trade war, seeking diplomatic solutions to secure exemptions and soften the blow for affected businesses. While retaliatory tariffs remain a possibility, the UK seems determined to preserve its economic stability and maintain strong transatlantic ties. With rising protectionism trends shaping the global economy, these US tariffs could significantly reshape the trading landscape for British firms. It's a challenge that may force industries to reassess their strategies and resilience in the face of growing uncertainty. To discuss the potential fallout from these tariffs and what they mean for UK businesses, I'm joined by two esteemed guests tonight. First, we have Andy Preston, a political commentator from Yorkshire, and joining us from Istanbul, we have Professor Tim Wilson, a geopolitical analyst. Gentlemen, it's great to have you both with us today.
Hi, very good to be here.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Preston, let's start with you. Has the UK become too dependent on the US market, making it vulnerable to this kind of pressure?
I don't think the UK has become too dependent on the US, but we are a major trader with the US. The EU remains our biggest single market for most of the things that we make and sell, but the US is the biggest single country by a long way. So there's a really strong trading link, and anything that can damage that by 5%, 10% or worse will be felt very significantly. Our auto industry is about approaching $10 billion in trade with the US. So that would be a significant worry for us. Interestingly, our government has been preparing for this. They say that they've been talking and negotiating with America. I'm very skeptical because I think what our government is doing is negotiating and talking with civil servants. And anyone who follows Donald Trump knows to speak to Trump himself, not staff. Secondly, our government says that they are now coming up with a range of measures to step in and help industries if the need arises. The problem we face there, though, is that our government has almost no financial room to do that. So I'm not sure how feasible that is. And the last thing I'll say, actually, that sets the UK apart from the EU, from Canada, from other nations, is that we have so far failed to say that we will impose tariffs. We've indicated that we will take measures when tariffs are imposed, but we haven't actually stood up and said that we will absolutely impose reciprocal tariffs. So the UK has been very soft on this, very kind and generous to Donald Trump, hoping that it wins good favour. Let's see what happens.
Indeed, very interesting. So, Professor Wilson, has Trump underestimated the UK's strategic value as a trade ally in his rush to impose tariffs?
I think Trump has underestimated the entire world, and this obsession with sort of being belligerent and being difficult, imposing problems, and then perhaps after a day or two relieving the problem and stopping it, like he did with Ukraine, with the abolition of intelligence sharing, it had an effect. It was a disastrous thing to do. And Andy says that the UK hasn't decided whether to impose tariffs in response. Keir Starmer says that he's doing calm pragmatism and doesn't want to impose tariffs. Suella Braverman, I noted today, said that if Keir Starmer was spent less time looking at Netflix, and if Rachel Reeves spent less time going to pop concerts, maybe there would be some sort of progress. But the real problem is you're dealing with a man who is simply unreliable. He emotionally attacks and then pulls back when he thinks too much when he thinks he's done too much. And the effect of these tariffs, even if Britain somehow or other manages to negotiate a special deal with Trump and the tariffs aren't as severe on Britain as on Europe, we are still going to be hit, not only by the tariffs from America on the EU, but also by the retaliatory tariffs from the EU on America. And we're going to be hit in Northern Ireland, where Northern Ireland is already reeling from the problems of Brexit and from the Windsor framework. And that is, you know, if you look, for example, Andy mentioned the automobile industry, that will be severely smashed in Northern Ireland. The whiskey industry, you mentioned the whiskey industry. What's it? Whiskey is Northern Ireland exports is it 1.3 billion of things to the US, and all of that is at risk. The car stuff, the industrial stuff, the medicines, the whiskey, all of that is at risk. There's a thing called Wild Atlantic Distillery, and I believe they're extremely concerned about what's going to happen to their exports. In the end, they think that their exports could simply die. This 800 million euros, 669 million pounds in exports killed off because of this knee-jerk attempt by Donald Trump to seem significant. He's not saving America, he's definitely not saving Europe, he's certainly not saving Ukraine, and he's doing us no favors either. This is a disaster.
Well, Mr. Preston, shouldn't Britain have seen this coming, given Trump's America First rhetoric hasn't changed since 2016?
Yes, absolutely. We should have seen it coming. And I think that, look, Keir Starmer went over to America and took an invite from the King to Donald Trump to come for a second state visit. And I think there was an idea that perhaps if you're nice to Donald Trump, he'll be nice back to us. And I suspect if you're nice to Trump, he probably is quite nice back at that moment. But I actually think the nicer you are, the tougher and harder he will be in the medium term. Trying to appease Trump is a really futile and stupid thing to do, and the right thing to do is to show him how strong you are. And for example, we've got very strong allies, Canada, the EU, Australia, Japan, and the UK, with those strong, trustworthy and reliable allies, is at least as strong and as powerful as the USA. And I think that if we worked with them, not to hurt the USA, but to just say we want to trade with you on a fair basis, and if you impose tariffs, we will act together and impose tariffs on you, I think he would back down. I think Tim hit on a really good point there, is that even if the UK manages to temporarily escape some tariffs announced tonight, which is unlikely, but it might happen, the world economy, including the USA's, will be damaged by tariffs. Trade will slow, the poor will get poorer, and countries like the UK will do less trade around the world. So it's literally in no one's interest to see this happen.
So new reality requires new approach. Therefore, Professor Wilson, could these tariffs backfire by pushing Britain closer to other global partners like India or China, for example?
It's possible that we can do better deals with India. I don't think it's going to push us any closer to China. I think it might push us oddly closer to Europe. I think the move to reintegrate Britain in some form to Europe is already taking place because of the Ukrainian situation, and I think we need to rethink what Europe is. We need to stop thinking about the European Union and start thinking about the continent of Europe, from Ireland to Istanbul and beyond to Ankara and so on. But we also need to think about the immediate problems. So Andy's quite right. We could leverage the United States by saying we're doing a better deal with Australia, we're doing a better deal with Canada, and so on. But this is a long-term program, and Trump is acting immediately. What is Liberation Day is happening today. This is Disaster Day, and exactly in the same way as he caused crisis in Ukraine, in one day he's going to do the same thing with the world economy. And it doesn't matter how much we have prepared, we are not prepared. We are still recovering from Brexit. And it doesn't matter whether you supported Brexit or you didn't support Brexit. We haven't seen the shoots of new trade and a sort of better global commerce because of Brexit. Now, Farage said that's because we didn't take advantage of Trump's offer back in 2016, 2017. He says, now that's off the table. I'm sure it is. If that's Farage's excuse, if that's Farage's explanation of why Brexit didn't work, great on him. But we have to deal with the reality as we've got it. And the reality as we've got it is that we are very vulnerable, and a trade war with America would leave, I think somebody's estimated that would leave us with a cut to GDP of 1% in 1 year. We can't afford that. We have to find some way. I don't think retaliatory tariffs are the way forward. I think we have to be talking, and we have to be talking not only to America, but to our allies in Europe and India and China. We have to try and discourage Trump from this extraordinarily brutal and silly process. The car industry, for example, it's not that we are exporting cars fully formed to America. We're exporting parts, and America is buying parts from us. We've got this global economy, and Trump is getting in the way of that production. This, I think, will end up not being simply a problem for Britain. It will be a problem for Britain. The pharmaceutical industry, for example, is bracing for serious concerns. I think it's 6.6 billion pounds of exports involved, and we could suddenly find ourselves without drugs. We could find ourselves without drugs. America could find itself without drugs. That's people's lives that we have to consider, simply because Trump wants to posture on the world stage and look tough. The art of the deal is the art of an illusion. It's the art of trying to grab a headline, and this isn't the way to promote stability and to promote friendship and alliance around the world. Trump is simply making enemies, and I think it's a monumental disaster. It's not just about whiskey, cars, and pharmaceuticals. It's about the impression that Trump is giving of America, that America is no longer a reliable trading partner, no longer a reliable defense partner, no longer a reliable nation. And that is, I think, the most worrying message. The trade tariffs are just one part of this chaos which Trump is manufacturing. So you've got chaos already in the East with Mr. Putin. You've now got chaos in the West with Mr. Trump.
That's indeed something to be discussed more right now. So, Mr. Preston, with British jobs on the line, shouldn't the US consider the real cost of these trade barriers to its closest ally?
You know what? I don't know if the US has allies in the way that we would use the word normally anymore. I think that an ally is a supportive friend, and a supportive friend is always reliable. And if a friend isn't reliable, then they're not a friend. A friend is someone you can count on. And I think that Trump's USA, that I perceive and others perceive now, is, Tim used the word unreliable. It's unreliable, and so you don't have friends in the USA anymore. You might be able to strike a deal on terms that suit them, and that's fine. And I don't object to countries looking after their own interests, so long as we all know up front that's the way it's going to work. But our economies are so interlinked now, whether it's the UK and the USA, or Australia and China, or Turkey and Kazakhstan. It doesn't matter. Everywhere is so interlinked that if some parts become poorer, then everyone becomes poorer. So the existence of tariffs will categorically damage everyone. Trump is acting in a really strange way in that he's enjoying the headlines, he's enjoying looking tough, he's getting a pat on the back for talking tough, but his actions will certainly make the poorest people in America poorer, and the world will suffer. Let's see how it pans out. People who are close to Trump always say, don't listen to what he says, watch what he does. So let's see what he actually does here.
Well, Professor Wilson, is Starmer right to resist retaliatory tariffs, or should Britain fight fire with fire to protect its industries?
Anastasia, I think it's absolutely essential when you're dealing with somebody who is borderline crazy, am I allowed to say that about Mr. Trump, that you don't make things worse. And I think it's the job of the adult in the room to try and calm things down. Now, I know that Starmer is holding out for the possibility that he could do a deal with the digital services tax, which was only ever temporary. All right, it brings in, I think, £800 million a year in tax. And if that were relaxed or abolished, it would be a great tax to get rid of. We want to get rid of taxes rather than encouraging more of them. That would make Amazon and Google and Meta happy. If that is sufficient to call off Trump, that would be great. But I think we need to take the lead. I think we need to use whatever influence we've got on Trump to persuade him that this entire tariff operation is a crazy disaster. And the world is simply uncertain at the moment anyway. We don't need somebody sitting behind the Resolute desk in a very poor-fitting wig or a hair transplant, trying to make the world more crazy and more uncomfortable. What we need is stability and peace. Now, I would be delighted if Trump could manage that. I don't think he's going. I'd be delighted if Starmer could manage that. I don't think he's going in the right direction at the moment. In fact, at the moment, he's giving the impression that he's a sort of poodle for Trump. We need to approach Trump from a position of strength. The digital tax services is probably our only lever, but it's worth floating that and seeing where that can go. I think retaliatory taxes, retaliatory tariffs are a bad idea, and Europe is wrong to be preparing to do that. It's a foolish move.
So, Mr. Preston, your opinion on this matter: is Starmer equipped with the international clout or economic leverage to push back against Trump's agenda?
Britain's a significant trading nation. We are a G7 country, and that's great. But actually, compared to the USA, we are tiny. So we don't have the economic might to push back America on our own. But with the allies that I talked about earlier, the reliable, trustworthy allies, as I say again, amongst many others, Canada, Australia, Japan, and the EU. If we were to work together, Trump would be very scared of annoying us, and he would be scared of us imposing tariffs. I think that Tim is slightly wrong, I'm afraid to say, that if we don't threaten to impose tariffs, we may be treated nicely today by Trump, but he will come back and ask for more tomorrow. And the impact on us in a tariff-laden world of not imposing tariffs means that we would become a dumping ground, in my opinion. So I think we have to, and we have to follow the lead of Canada. And we look at what Canada's done. The Liberal Party there were struggling. Mark Carney took over. They were behind in the polls. And once Donald Trump stood up and started saying, oh, we're going to do this to Canada, it might be the 51st state, and we're going to impose horrendous tariffs, Mark Carney started talking tough, reciprocating tariffs, and the popularity of him and his party has gone through the roof. And they look certain now to win the impending election in Canada. And I don't want to live in a tariff-laden world, but nor do I want to be the only place that doesn't impose any tariffs and becomes a dumping ground for cheap stuff, and our business suffers terribly. We've got to stand with our allies, stand up against Trump. And the short answer, Anastasia, to your question is, on our own, we're not a significant threat to the US. But with Canada, the EU, Australia and Japan, we certainly are.
And Professor Wilson, if the UK wants special treatment, shouldn't it offer something in return, as it's already been mentioned, like tax breaks or defense cooperation?
Well, I hope we can do defense cooperation, and there are tax breaks available, and maybe Starmer's going to offer those. I think Andy, I'm not trying to be some sort of pushover here, and I think we should be standing together with our allies across the world. But I think equally, we have allies in the United States as well. I think there are people beyond the White House who recognize that this sort of tariff bonanza is not good for America either. We need to sit down. We need to persuade America that this is we need to persuade Trump this is a bad move, and at a time of chaos, we need more stability. I think the OBR said that the tariffs will wipe out all Rachel Reeves' hope for fiscal headroom and an improvement in her spring statement. That's correct, but it will wipe out everybody else's hope as well. And in a world which is teetering on the edge of massive war, we don't need further problems from Trump playing trade games in the White House. We need more stability, and I think we need to get people to talk to Trump. So I think it's not so much that we all have to stand together and attack Trump as a great force, and I entirely agree. Trump responds to tough talking. I don't think he's responded yet as positively as he could to Canada. Certainly, if you're tough talking, then you're standing in terms of local elections. You're standing in terms of national elections are good. Canada looks well set to have some sort of stability as a result of standing up to Trump. But that's a national thing. That's a Canadian thing. I don't think Canada has yet stopped the tariffs being imposed. We need to band together and talk to Trump and persuade Trump that this is bad. I'm not sure how we do that.
Well, indeed, that's very interesting. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as transatlantic tensions rise, UK industries brace for impact from Trump's sweeping tariffs, threatening billions in trade and thousands in jobs. With Starmer under pressure to protect national interests without sparking a trade war, the question now is, who holds the upper hand? Well, dear viewers, thank you so much for watching Inside Politics. See you in the next edition.